I think Christmas reminds us that God is always with us. I think if you look at a lot of other religions, a lot of other ways people connect with God, it's always about things that you can do to get closer to God. Whether it's the rules, whether it's the rituals, whether it's the time, whether you're good enough, bad enough. But Christmas is a reminder that God came to us, and that God sees our value and was willing to leave heaven to come and be among us, to walk among us, to show us what He's really like. And so Christmas is a constant reminder that God believes in us. God believes we're worth it, and therefore we should be worth it. We should feel that we have a place in God's kingdom. Christmas is the highlight of the church existence. It reminds us that we have a higher calling to go out and to share that light and that message and that hope to a world that's often stuck in a very competitive and a very demeaning world. And especially in our environment today, it speaks volumes about who we are as a people. So that's what I think Christmas is really all about.
So the question of why we celebrate Christmas is, I think it's kind of an interesting question. I think we grow up with this concept of Christmas as, the time that Jesus came, that God's Son is born into the world. But I think from a little bit more of a theological point of view, we need to think more about just the general idea of incarnation with Christmas. When Jesus comes into the world, it is God's self being incarnated into the world. It's love being incarnated in human flesh and blood. I love how Eugene Peterson starts the first chapter of the Gospel of John in the Message translation of the Bible. He says, the Word came into the neighborhood, or moved into the neighborhood, right? The Word took on flesh and bones and moved into the neighborhood. And I really like that kind of incarnational imagery. And so as the church, when we celebrate Christmas, I think that idea of incarnation, not just so much Jesus' birthday, but this idea of love being incarnated in flesh and blood into the world in a whole new way, in an amazing way, that then we as the church get to incarnate into the world day after day after day as we go forward in our own lives.
So, I really feel like Christmas is all about the presents.
Are you serious?
I am serious. The only trouble is, your mind went immediately to Presents, and that's not what I meant. I mean capital Presence, the presence of God. And that is the gift of Christmas, that we know that we are never truly alone. He's always with us, God with us, Emmanuel. That peace is available for us. That all we have to do is receive the gift, a life, a salvation that is offered to us in Jesus. And He came down at Christmas.
But I really believe Christmas, and the reason why we celebrate it is because we're celebrating a love story. The love story that God has and continues to have with humanity, and this amazing gift that God gives the world, and coming to see about us in life of Jesus. Really emptying God's self out, to feel our struggle, to know our pain, to understand our brokenness in new ways, so that we might get a glimpse of amazing love and grace and peace and hope that really come in the space of the innocence of a child that enters the world as a blank slate, open to being loved and cared for, and open to loving and caring for. And for me, that is the amazing gift of Christmas, and the reason why we celebrate it year after year after year is to remind ourselves that we are that loved, and that the best gift that we ever received was God's love story and coming to see about us. And the birth of Jesus, the life of Jesus, the death and the resurrection of Jesus, and the reminder that one day Jesus will soon return.
Why do we celebrate Christmas? Simply put, the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. And one of the things that we do in celebrating Christmas is we celebrate that God became human, that in the person of Jesus, that God came and lived our life and died our death and defeated death. Therefore, it's while the early church really celebrated Easter more than it ever celebrated Christmas, for us it's important because it reminds us that the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and God, in God's very special way, told us that we were not alone, and that indeed God was with us.
So Cassie has asked me to share my feelings, thoughts about why we celebrate Christmas, which I think is important to do, because as I think about it, when we really settle on why we celebrate Christmas, what happens at Christmas, I think that will also maybe make us rethink how we celebrate Christmas. Obviously, we celebrate Christmas because we mark that as a time to celebrate the coming of God into the world in Jesus Christ, which could have happened in a number of ways, but He chose to come as we come, born as we are born, and really born into a situation worse than what a lot of people are born into. To be born to parents who obviously don't have a great deal of money, to be born in a barn for all intents and purposes, in the feeding trough of an animal. Jesus comes into the world in a way that would be hard to get much lower than. These days, they'd probably call CPS on his parents and take the baby. He comes into our world, into our circumstances, and grows up as we grow up. We mark His coming, and we celebrate that. So, how do we celebrate that? Do we celebrate that in a way that emulates what Jesus did? Being present, entering into some of the lower experiences, the harder experiences of human life, to bring hope, to bring blessing, to bring the love and the presence and experience of God? Or do we always do that? We do the celebrating as the angels and the shepherds did, and rightly so. But how do we honor the day? How do we honor the experience, the fact that God comes into the world in a way that honors human life, in a way that we don't always do? But that's what God does. It reminds me of one of my favorite quotes from a pastor, Howard Thurman, who takes from the experience this, that in my little life, in my little world, with my little sins and my little sorrows, the great high God is at home. That God wants to be with us, longs to be with us, to reclaim us, to bring us hope, to bring us experience of His love and His presence. And that's what Christmas does. And I believe that Jesus does it the way He does, moving all the way through human life as we move through human life, so that when He says, "Follow me," we can't excuse ourselves from that. We can't act like, well, He did something different than we did as far as how He lived His life. Not as a human being He didn't. If there's anything different, and it's a different that we can also claim, He lives His life completely driven by and guided by love for the Father, and following and yielding to the move of the Holy Spirit in and through Him. And so, to celebrate Christmas isn't a one-day thing or a special service. To celebrate Christmas is to say we're celebrating the coming of God into the world, and God is still here. So to celebrate, to honor, not just the event, but the ongoing fact of God's presence, calls us to follow Christ, to be Christ in the world as He teaches it to us in the Gospel. So as you live out every day, not just December 25th. Merry Christmas.